And a great big Monday afternoon to you. It feels like morning, but it's a Monday afternoon. Man, I feel like it's the Mondayest Monday ever. Welcome to the Cabin Fever podcast, everybody. Hi, everybody. It's Brent Bailey. It is another glorious day to be alive. You'll have to excuse me if I feel a little bit off today. I drove last night. We left after church yesterday, Jody and I, and drove to Kentucky, and we got in at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm kind of, a little bit out of it. I'm joined right now by my wife, and she's on command over there on the switcher today, and she's we're at my dad calls this Northern Command. So that's where we are today. We're at Northern Command, and it's a great day to be on the podcast. We're looking forward to our guest today is Lyle Wells of Integrus Leadership, and you're going to really enjoy him today. We'll talk about him in just a few minutes. As we were driving last night, we drove through Atlanta, and man, what a change a couple of months.
Oh my gosh, yes.
we drove through when COVID first started. We came back from our Hawaii event with my father-in-law, and we decided we're not going to quarantine here. So we drove up here to Kentucky to be with my parents on the farm, and Atlanta was just like a ghost town when we drove through then. Yeah. Last night when we drove through, it was the Atlanta we all know and love.
Exactly, it was. It was
extreme.
There were lots of cars in the road.
Yeah, a lot of people out and about, and it was a good drive though.
Yeah,
not bad,
was. There was some traffic, but that was really because of construction. It really wasn't anything. But there were a lot of people. I was. You can tell. I was starting to think that if nobody was going to go anywhere for the 4th of July, but you could have fooled us yesterday because there was lots of folks out traveling. And so, if you're out traveling this weekend, where are you going to go? That's our question for the day. If you scroll right down below us when you're sharing the podcast, answer it. Tell us where your plans are for the 4th of July weekend. It's coming up this week. It's Saturday. It's going to be another great big day. Yep. Set off some fireworks and celebrate the country's freedom. Yep. We need this right now. We need to celebrate like we do right now. We need a good celebration, a good break from all of the drama that 2020 has brought with it so far. So speaking of taking a break, we were talking last night in the car as we were driving up. A couple of really cool things we noticed around the Atlanta area. Yeah. I'm trying to remember what it was.
We don't remember what it was. We found out that you can rent the cabin that Tony Stark lived in the Avengers Endgame. When they had to come get him out of retirement. You can actually rent that. That's a real Airbnb cabin just outside of the Atlanta downtown area, and you can go in and rent that.
And it's
how cool would that be?
Totally.
I mean, you're just there. You're there, staying in Tony Stark's cabin, ready to save the world by inventing time travel.
Yeah, I think it says it will sleep 10 people.
Right.
And you want to know the price of it, babe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of course, and I know Brian's watching right now because we've talked about this already, and we want to rent it. So how much does it rent out a night?
It is just a simple $800 a night.
Oh, God. Did you say $800 a night?
I did.
Whoa.
Yeah, Jenny looked it up and she was like, "Yeah, we could do that for $3,000 for the week, or however you made it."
I wasn't expecting that. Wow.
Yeah.
And it's
crazy.
In Atlanta. Wow.
Yes. Now it is beautiful. The land around
it's
it is
true.
beautiful.
It is nice.
And
that's where they had the funeral scene at the end when they.
And in the beginning of the movie. I'm going to forget people's names, but some of the characters came to see
Captain
Tony.
America, Ant-Man, Black Widow.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not a nerd, I promise.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing a Star Wars shirt today at all.
No, not at all. But to piggyback on that, this is what is really cool. I was looking up. I don't even know what it was I was looking up. I think I was looking up, what can you do? The Stranger Things cabin.
Oh, yeah. We've gone and done that, too. Yeah. We've actually done the tour of a few places where they film in Atlanta. We've gone to where they film The Walking Dead. We've gone to where they film Stranger Things. Uh-huh. We've gone and seen where they film a couple other things. And Sheriff Hopper's cabin has now been turned into
an escape room.
which I think would be so cool.
That would be totally cool.
So maybe we hit that on the way back home.
Yeah.
And stop and
yeah,
try
and
it
it's
out.
really the price is decent. I mean,
well, that's
for that.
I mean, we were really surprised. We've done that 2 years in a row. We've gone through Atlanta where they film. And it's not expensive to stay in a, unless you're staying in Tony Stark's cabin, but
right.
but in a little city called Sonoya, and that's where they film most of The Walking Dead. And I know immediately a lot of our audience probably goes, "Oh man, why would you?" That is one of the most charming and romantic little cities I've ever been in my life.
Yes.
And they showed pictures before they started filming there and afterwards, and it was abandoned. It was just kind of run down. They've turned it into this charming little city, and one of the cast. Actually, a couple of the folks on the team there, Norman Reedus and Greg Nicotero, I think is an executive producer.
Yep.
They have opened a restaurant right in downtown Sonoya called Nick and Norman's, and the food is
so good.
And it's romantic for all of you couples looking to get away for a romantic weekend. It's a really nice place to go.
Yeah.
And of course, if you look right across the street, there's where they're filming, and it's all the end of the world, and the apocalypse is like. Just down at the end of the street.
If they'd let you in, you could just walk
You're
right
here
in.
walking around smelling flowers and shopping in all these little antique stores, and then just 300 yards away, the apocalypse is happening. So
exactly.
Anyway, so if you got to go try that, and I think maybe we will. We'll stop on the way home on our drive back home.
We really love that restaurant. We've been there a couple of times.
But we need to go to Sheriff Hopper's.
We do need to do that. The kids would love that. Yeah. So, yeah, that'd be awesome.
All right. Well, let's get into the show today. We got, as you can tell, Luke's not with us because we're at Northern Command, but we have a great show planned for you today. This last March, right before really COVID was happening while we were in Hawaii, but we were there and we were starting to hear things happening here on the mainland, but we were just put in a cocoon for a week at my father-in-law's conference, and it's unlike anything that you could really ever go to. It's at a really nice resort location. It's in Hawaii. He does another one in California at a 5-star hotel. And we were just put into this cocoon of just keeping ourselves, under great teachers and coaches and leadership experts and really business leaders. And it was just the perfect place to ride this out because everybody left there with the right kind of attitude of, yes, this is happening. Yes, this is coming, but we're gonna be okay. And one of the speakers was just. It was one of his first. It was the first time I'd ever heard him. I think it was his first event, and he was just. It was just so good to hear the things that he was saying. He was speaking that day about developing leadership and relationships with your team, and then he was talking about godly relationships. And I got to ask him a question about closing the gap between people on your staff and as the leadership. If you feel like nobody's getting what you're having to say. And closing the gap. And I immediately was so blessed by his answer. I went and text guys that are on my board and on our leadership team, and it's like what this guy just told me was amazing, and he inspired me that day. And we've been trying to figure out a great time to have him on the program, and I tell you, it wasn't easy. He's got a really good assistant that he runs everything through, but I'm so glad to have with me. He is a leadership coach for sports teams and educators, nonprofit organizations, church plants, and he just does this all over the world, and I'm so glad to have him on the program today. Please welcome Lyle Wells to the program this afternoon. How are you, Lyle? It's good to have you.
Well, I'm doing great. I didn't jump into the chat, but I just want to thank you, Brent and Jody. My plan for 4th of July was to watch Avengers Endgame because I didn't make time for it last summer. So now that I know people die and there's a cabin and Iron Man comes out of retirement, you just gave me 3 hours of my life back. So thank you both.
Hey, we know that you're all about being efficient. So, whatever we can do to help.
I appreciate that. I needed you two in school so I didn't have to read all those books.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm going to invent an offshoot of Cliff Notes called Brent's Notes, and it'll all be about movies. So, but man, Lyle, thank you so much for squeezing us into your schedule and getting things set aside for us to have you on the program today. Your stuff that you're talking about is so needed, and right now, so many people are just turned upside down with this whole COVID thing and with other drama that has come through 2020, people are still trying to put their lives back together and understand. I hate to use the phrase "the new normal," but I was just wanted to have you on today because I know that some people are daring to test the waters again, and I just wanted you to kind of come on and kind of coach us in what do we need to be doing in order to do that.
Well, that's such a great question, Brent. I mean, I think that's one of your giftings is asking really good questions. But you talked a little bit about our time in Hawaii, and I mean that was just such a perfect metaphor. All of us pre-COVID, we were living our lives with a pretty good rhythm. I mean, we're wired to be rhythmic human beings, and then all of a sudden panic hit. And I think you guys left a little later than we did, but on Friday night, we were scheduled to fly out on Saturday, and there started to be rumblings of a domestic travel ban, and there were some rumors about that. And people were kind of freaking out, and I'm thinking if I'm going to get shut down and shelter in place, Maui might be a pretty good place. I'm not in any hurry to get off this island,
Yeah.
but we got to the airport the next day and it was just full on panic. I mean, it really did feel like the Titanic. I mean, people were just desperate. That two people that sat next to us on our flight back to the mainland were a mother and a daughter. The daughter was a college student. They had flown to Maui for spring break, landed, found out about the potential travel ban, sat in the airport for 6 hours, and then flew home. Didn't step outside of the airport after flying from Vermont to Hawaii. And but Brent, the next couple of weeks, as I started talking to leaders, that strategic or rhythmic to panic was very evident. I mean, people didn't know what to do. And then how do we get back to strategic? And I think there's four things that are really important for us to think about after spending 100 days or so in crisis. The first one is urgency. I think one thing that COVID taught us all was there's more bandwidth than we thought. And whether it's a global pandemic or any kind of a crisis, we all kind of find out that our limits can be stretched. And so hopefully leaders, whether they're church leaders, corporate leaders, educators, mothers and fathers, I hope we understand that there's more capacity than we thought we had.
So good.
And we should see it in our teams and we should see it in each other. Now that doesn't mean that a season of rest isn't necessary for all of us. We're going to have to catch our breath and kind of re-energize. But we know that we've got the capacity to do so much more. I think the second thing is that I would say is clarity. I think a crisis always creates clarity. And I know for us, the first question I asked our team when we gathered on that Monday after being together, after I was with you in Hawaii, is we've got to determine what kills us first. Like, they're saying, for every month of COVID, 10% of small businesses are going to close and 10% of churches are going to close. And I'm like, we got to decide what kills us first and not let that happen. And what we determined was, from a clarity standpoint, not being relevant. Like if we weren't there right now to speak in the lives of the people that we serve and even people we never had relationships with, that would be the death of Integrus, because our mission is to equip and encourage leaders for greater impact. And so we started launching a weekly webinar. We started giving stuff away for free. We created a new product called the 21-Day Strategic Accelerator. And we just said, we're here and we'll serve. And, our leadership team bought into that. So the first thing is urgency. The second thing that we should be coming out of this with is clarity. And so if I can give you one exercise and then I'll let you ask some clarifying questions. One of the things that we've done with our team, and I've led dozens of other groups through this now, is we call it funerals and baby showers. And we just say, in light of what we've learned about ourselves, our world, our organizations in the last 100 days, what do we need to have a funeral for? What do we never have to do again? And what do we need to have baby showers for? What do we have to do more of, or do we need to start doing? And so for you and Jody and your family, funerals and baby showers. For your church, funerals and baby showers. Maybe even this podcast. What kind of guests do we need to start having come on and not? But how can we start to make a shift into, use your words, the new normal? But it has to be strategic and intentional.
My goodness, that was wow. That was like drinking from a fire hose. That was a lot of information there. So if the first step, and I don't want to sound like I'm going to ask you to repeat that, but that first step of urgency, some people would think that their panic is urgency, but I would think there's a difference in there, isn't there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So can you kind of help people clarify the difference between urgency and panic?
Yeah. So you think about panic. Panic is activity with really no defined end in sight, right? I mean, we hear there's a fire, we just start running. I read a book several years ago about survival, and they said the number one key to people that survive building fires, plane wrecks, whatever, is that they had a plan. So they actually listened to the flight attendant when the flight attendant said, locate the two exits nearest you. So I think the difference between panic and urgency is there's a target in mind. I know exactly where we're going and why. I think the other thing, Brent, is that it's resourced. One of our favorite, we call them tweets or tattoos, things that are so good, you need to tweet them. You probably ought to get the tattoo, is that nothing's a priority until it's resourced. And so we saw that a lot in the last 100 days, people doing a lot of activity, but there was no resource behind it to support it or sustain it. So at the end of the day, that wasn't accomplishment. It was simply activity.
Our guest is Lyle Wells. He is the president of Integrus Leadership, and man, he is dropping some bombs on you. If you're not paying attention, and you need to come back and watch this one again, because this is gold that we're giving out right now. So as we move into resourcing and making this an urgent matter, how do people, I know that some people, again, it ties back to the panic, I think, but some people just don't do well with the pressure of anything urgent. They're very laid back and very just kind of, whatever, let's just see what happens. How can they turn that up and be urgent without really getting into, I don't know if the panic's not the right word I'm trying to go for here, but where they're being urgent without losing who they are, I guess is the way to ask that.
That's a great question, because, right, we all have different internal clocks. Yours runs really hot. Most people would say mine runs pretty hot. My wife says no when it comes to household chores, but that's a whole nother discussion. We can do that podcast another time. But we all have different internal clocks. And so I think a couple of things. One is determine what are your high value and low value activities. Mm-hmm. What are activities that really accelerate you towards your desired outcomes? And what are some of these things that we do that really aren't bearing the fruit that we had hoped they would for whatever reason? But, high capacity leaders have a ridiculous value for their own time. They protect their time. So protect your time, assign your time, just like we have budget for money. I don't understand why people don't do the same thing with their time, because it's also a limited resource.
So good.
But it can be a great differentiator. A team that values, protects, and assigns their time, or an individual, they can have a great competitive advantage over all the organizations and people that don't. So protect it and assign it, be intentional with it. I think the other thing, and we talked about this a little bit in Maui, is create habits. One of the things I love about the crisis is it drives us back to habits that we should have had a long time ago. right? A middle-aged man has a heart attack. What's the doctor going to say? Eat better and exercise.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? If you'd been doing that 15 years ago, we might not be in this situation. And so I start hearing people talking about, yeah, during COVID, I'm meeting with my team every morning for 30 minutes to make sure we're all on the same page and everybody's moving in the right direction. I'm like, yeah, that's stuff we've been teaching for 30 years. Do that now and keep doing it. So one encouragement for the people that are listening is don't let go of the great habits that you formed over this crisis, whether it's dinner with your family, an evening walk with your spouse, whatever. Keep those great habits because those ultimately end up being high value activities.
Wow. That's so good. Okay, so you started off by saying there were 4 things. We got to the first 2, and I don't want to run out of time without getting the other 2. So what are those?
Well, urgency, clarity were 1 and 2.
Yes.
The third is sensibility. Developing those habits, doing those things that make sense now, but that we should have been doing a long time ago. And then the last one is unity, because Brent, whether you live in Florida, a hurricane comes, a some kind of other community crisis tends to unite people. And so hopefully it's drawn teams and families closer together. And I want to leverage that as we move forward. So sensibility and unity are the other 2 things that we ought to be taking out of the crisis.
Our guest is Lyle Wells, the president of Integrus Leadership. Lyle, as we're talking about unity, there's some folks that, and in my experience, and maybe I'm the only one that's seen this, but I doubt it. I know that some folks think that in order to be in unity with somebody else, that they have to agree with everything that the other person's doing. They have to think that they have to like everybody that's on the team. And I know for me, it's been hard to convince folks unity isn't necessarily agreeing with everything and being best friends with everybody. And can you just kind of maybe speak to that a little bit about how to build unity, even though we may not have a lot in common?
Right. Well, I think there's 2 really, really big pillars there, Brent. The first one is we do have things in common. Nobody wants to be average. Everybody wants to do big, important things with their life. Every believer feels like they've got a calling of God upon their life. And so, that's one thing that should unify us. I believe that human beings are herd animals, and we naturally look for reasons to connect. And so if we can be intentional about building those bridges, those connections, I think that facilitates unity. But the second one is the most important. And this might be the best thing that I'll say all day. Most organizations, and you mentioned early on, I work with secular organizations, Wall Street, Las Vegas Boulevard. I work with faith-based organizations, athletics. I've actually been the leadership coach for an astronaut for at least one day of my life. My coaching was out of this world, I tell people. But the vast majority of organizations that we see, they're executing opinions and not a vision. And that is so disunifying.
Wow.
When I'm constantly executing the opinions of the leader or the opinions of the leadership team, or where, for whatever reason, the opinion that we feel like we need to go for these few days, there has to be a vision. There has to be a clear set, North Star, stake in the ground. This is where we're going together. And that unites a team.
My goodness, wow. That man, a side of my head just blew out on that. Now, let's just talk about that for a second. The difference, because most people probably never even thought of that. What is the difference in a vision and an opinion?
Yeah, well, so
I know you could talk on that for hours, but
I can do it quick.
Okay.
Mission is why do we exist, right? So the mission of your church, the mission of your family, the mission of your business is why are we here? The vision is where are we going? So if you think about vision is on the horizon. And so there usually has to be some metrics around a vision, a timeline, a deadline, so the number of people that we want to impact, whatever. So vision is something that we can see. It's attainable, and there's some metrics as to what it's going to look like to achieve it. And then the last thing, and again, this comes back to unity. You have your mission statement. Why do we exist? Vision. Where are we going? And then I call it the process statement. What do we want it to look like as we get there? And so, for example, our process statement at Integrus is we want to do hard things with people we really care about and have fun getting there. And so we're very clear about that. And so we're constantly asking, is this hard enough? Do we have the right relationships on our team? And are we enjoying it and having fun? That doesn't mean every day is summer camp, but if you can't enjoy it, then why go there? So like think about you and Jody. I mean, you had a vision. We're going to get to my father's house for 4th of July. But your process was, we're not going to kill ourselves. Somebody did a little research when you're driving through Atlanta. You've made some plans going back. So you've innately done some of the things that we just talked about.
So good. This is Lyle Wells, the president of Integrus, and let's just talk about Integrus real quick, and we'll let you get out of here. Your program that you've got going on for leaders. I'm actually doing it right now. I just did help me again with the terminology. It's where you get the folks to kind of observe you and.
Yeah, we would just call it a behavioral profile or assessment.
Yeah, and so I've gotten the results back, but I'm waiting. We're still going to schedule and do a debrief. But just kind of explain that to what it is that it does for the folks in leadership.
Yeah, so we start with this fundamental belief that nobody wants to be average, right? No third grader on career day says, I want a middle-level management position. I'm hoping for a cubicle, maybe a real plant if I get lucky. I don't know. Kids in third grade, they want to play in the pros. They want to be Iron Man. They want to, they're watching those shows going, I think I could save the world. Think about the people that commuted to work today. And, there are car singers and car dancers. Brent, nobody sings backup in the car. Everybody's kind of like exactly Beyonce. Right. I think I got this. I'm good. So on their way, two things happen. I don't want to be average, but on my way to my dream, people get stuck or they get scared, or somebody plants a church or starts a business or starts to coach a team. Everybody wants to win a championship. So we focus on behaviors because we believe that leadership is ultimately about our behavior, because it's our behaviors that influence others. Brent, you can tell your family you love them all day long. If your behaviors don't align with that, you're never going to have the influence you want. You can tell your church how much you care about them and how passionate you are for them to shepherd them. If your behaviors don't align, they're never going to believe you. And so that's why we use a behavioral tool, because ultimately our goal is to help leaders align their behavior with their desired outcomes. You want a better marriage, you're going to have to change some behaviors, or your marriage isn't going to change. We say, if nothing changes, then nothing changes. I'm from Texas. Our affectionate term for that, we call that the cul-de-sac of stupidity. Driving around thinking the scenery's going to change. It's not. You've got to change your behavior. And so we stand on Deuteronomy 3:28. The Lord tells Moses to commission Joshua, and he says, strengthen him, make him better, give him tools, and encourage him. And so we exist to equip and encourage leaders all over the world towards greater impact.
My guest today has been Lyle Wells. His information is going up on the screen right now. If you'd like to be use them as a tool for your organization, you can go to integrus.org or give them an email, info@integrus.org, or you can reach out on social media, Integrus Leadership on Facebook, and Lead with Lyle on Instagram, and Twitter. I know that his information is going to be a blessing to you. As I said, I'm actually in the middle of doing this myself, and I'm looking forward to having the debrief so that I can grow and learn as a leader myself. Lyle, I just want to say again, appreciate so much you coming on the program today. Thank you for, just blowing our minds with some great leadership talk, and we hope that you have a great 4th of July weekend.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and great respect for you, Brent, and the work that you do and the way you're equipping and encouraging leaders even through this medium. So just please know all of the stuff we've done in the last 100 days, it's free. Reach out to us. We'll be glad to share all of it with you. We've talked to some great leaders during this season as well. So it's our heart to serve and to equip and encourage. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Lyle. Have a great rest of your day and happy 4th of July.
I will.
And enjoy Avengers Endgame.
Knowing what the end game is, I'm ready to roll now.
Okay. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. That's Lyle Wills, everybody of Integrus Leadership. Man alive, what a great bunch of things that was just said to us today. So much information I'm still unpacking some of it. It's just so much. I might have to go back and listen to our own podcast ourselves. So thanks again for joining us today. Wednesday coming up on the program. Jody, help me remember me. Who do I have on Wednesday? Do you remember?
Oh, yes, I will remember.
She's going to pull it up right now. I'm totally still 3 o'clock in the morning, still driving, and so I'm still a little bit foggy. Yeah. Wednesday, we have Jeff Paul. That's right. Jeffrey Paul of Wigs for Kids. Yeah. He's going to be with us on Wednesday. I can't wait to have him on. It's going to be such a great day. He's got one of the great movements for kids with cancer to get the wigs, and it's a great thing. So you'll want to be with us on Wednesday. We love you. Have a great rest of your day. Get outside and enjoy. Break the cabin fever. We'll see you Wednesday, everybody. Take care.